Ilara had always been a wanderer, a soul too restless for the narrow streets of her village. She had walked through forests in the cold dawn, where mist curled around ancient trees like the whispers of ghosts. Today her path had led her farther than ever before, through twisted roots and shadowed clearings, until she stumbled upon a place she could not have imagined. A grand hall carved into the side of a mountain, bathed in moonlight, and alive with murmurs of creatures that did not belong to the human world. Her heart beat faster as she approached. The hall was unlike anything she had ever seen. Pillars of black stone rose high, etched with silver runes that shimmered in the pale light. At the center, a throne gleamed under a single beam of moonlight, a throne that seemed to draw her forward, even though she did not know why. Before she could stop herself, Ilara stepped into the hall, her boots echoing against the stone floor. The murmurs grew louder, and she realized she had entered a gathering unlike any she had known. Dozens of creatures taller than men with sharp eyes and fur ranging from silver to black turned to watch her. Their gazes pierced through her like the chill of winter. She felt a twinge of fear, but also a strange pull. Without thinking, her legs carried her toward the throne. It called to her, whispered promises she could not understand. The moment she sat, a hush fell over the hall. And then, the sound of a growl that shook the air. From the shadows a figure emerged. Tall, commanding, with eyes the color of molten gold, he walked with a confidence that made the room itself seem to bend to his presence. His hair was dark as the night sky, and his movements were fluid, powerful, and predatory. He was the Lycan king. Ilara froze. I didn't mean, she stammered, rising from the throne. Kyle's gaze did not waver. His eyes held something she could not name. Anger, curiosity, and something far older, deeper, and more dangerous. You sit where only the fated mate may sit, he said, his voice a low growl that made the stone walls vibrate. Do you understand what you have done? Ilara's mouth opened, then closed. I didn't know. Do you dare to claim a throne that is not yours? Kale stepped closer, each movement measured like a storm approaching. The Lycan nobles behind him tensed, their sharp claws glinting in the moonlight. Some whispered in a language she could not understand. The air thrummed with energy, a current that seemed to seep into her bones. Ilara swallowed hard. I didn't mean to. I was just trying to rest. Kale's eyes narrowed. Rest? In the seat of the king? He circled her slowly, his presence pressing down like gravity. A human in my hall. In my throne. During the mating ceremony. Do you understand the law you have broken? No. She tried again, but her words failed her. A whisper ran through the hall, soft but full of awe. The Lycan noble stepped back, giving Kale room. Ilara felt exposed, every heartbeat loud in her chest. And then Kale did something unexpected. He paused. You are not like the others, he said quietly, almost to himself. You carry the scent of destiny. Ilara blinked, confused. Destiny? Me? Kale's golden eyes locked onto hers. Yes, you do not know it yet, but you are mine. You are the fated mate. The word struck her like lightning. She staggered backward, clutching the edge of the throne for balance. Fated what? You heard me, Kyle said, his voice now both fierce and soft, like a winter wind over a frozen lake. By the ancient law of the Lycan court, you are bound to me. You have awakened the bond simply by sitting in this seat. Ilara's mind raced. She wanted to run, to escape the strange, dangerous power that pulsed from the king. But every instinct in her body froze her in place. There was something in Kale's gaze that rooted her to the spot, something older than fear, older than time. A murmur ran through the hall. She saw the Lycan nobles exchange glances, some wary, some awed. She realized then that her accidental act had not gone unnoticed. She had stepped into a web of ancient traditions and laws, and there was no easy way to undo it. Kale stepped closer. She could see the strength in his form, the rippling muscles beneath his dark tunic, the sharp line of his jaw, and the intensity of his eyes. Yet there was something else there, too. Something almost human. Vulnerability? Loneliness? She could not name it, but it made her chest tighten. You will not leave this hall until you understand your role, Kale said. You are part of this ceremony now, whether you wish it or not. Ilara's mind spun. She had always thought herself a simple wanderer, a human with no place in a world of kings and supernatural beings. And now she had become the center of a court that seemed both magnificent and terrifying. I can't. She tried, but Kale raised a hand and the room fell silent again. The very air seemed to bend around him. "You cannot run from what is written in your blood," he said. His voice, though commanding, carried a weight of inevitability. The fated mate is never free from the king. Her heart pounded as the reality sank in. She was trapped, bound by a law older than the mountains surrounding them. And yet beneath the fear there was a spark, an undeniable, trembling curiosity. Why her? Why now? What was it about her that had drawn Kale's eyes, his attention, his claim? Kale turned toward the gathered Lycan nobles, his presence radiating authority. "She is mine," he declared, his voice echoing through the hall. "Let none forget it," the nobles murmured, some bowing their heads, some watching her with guarded eyes. Ilara felt a strange mixture of terror and awe. She was now a part of a world she had never imagined, a world of power, danger, and ancient bonds. Kyle returned his gaze to her. "Tomorrow you will learn what it means to sit in the king's seat. Tonight you will rest, if you can." Ilara nodded, too stunned to speak. Her mind was a whirlwind of questions, of fear and fascination, of the strange pull she felt toward this formidable creature. She realized she was not the same as she had been when she first entered the hall. Something had shifted. Something ancient and binding had begun. As she followed Kale's silent command to a chamber prepared for her, she could not stop glancing back at the throne. The moonlight glinted off the silver runes and she felt a shiver run down her spine. She had unknowingly claimed the seat of a king, and with it her life had changed forever. The night stretched on, long and restless. Outside her chamber she could hear the murmurs of the Lycan court, the soft padding of paws and the distant howl of wolves under the moon. Sleep eluded her. The weight of Kale's claim pressed upon her mind like the tide of a stormy sea. Finally, as the first light of dawn crept into the misty forest outside, Ilara allowed herself a whisper. "What have I done?" And from the shadows, Kale's voice, low and certain, drifted to her. "You have awakened destiny, and destiny never forgets." The world outside her chamber seemed larger, stranger, and more beautiful than she could have imagined. She was no longer merely a human wandering alone. She was the fated mate of the Lycan king, bound by law, by magic, and by something older than time itself. And somewhere deep in her heart, a spark of curiosity, fear, and something like longing began to grow. Cliffhanger. Ilara sinks into the weight of her new reality. But as the door to her chamber clicks shut, a faint, echoing whisper reaches her ears. The fated mate has arrived. But the trials have only just begun. Ilara woke to a soft, silvery light spilling into her chamber. The air was cool, tinged with the scent of pine and the faint musk of the forest. She sat on the edge of the bed, her mind still reeling from the events of the night before. The words of Kale, the Lycan king, echoed in her thoughts. "You are mine. You are the fated mate." She had never imagined a world like this, one where beings of power and ancient law ruled not with kings and queens of flesh and gold, but with claws, fangs, and the strength of centuries. Yet there was no denying it. She had sat in the king's throne, and now the threads of fate had entwined her life with Kale's. The door to her chamber opened silently, and Kale entered, his golden eyes scanning the room. Even in human form he radiated power, every movement controlled, every glance measured. He did not smile, yet there was something in his presence that made her pulse quicken. "You slept," he said simply, his voice calm but commanding. "Good. You will need your strength." Ilara swallowed and stood, trying to summon courage she did not feel. I don't know what I'm supposed to do," she admitted, her voice small. "I didn't mean to sit in your throne. I don't understand any of this." Kale's gaze softened, just slightly, though his intensity remained. "Most do not. Few understand until they are made to." He paused, letting his words settle around her like the mist outside. "The seat you took is not just a chair. It is the symbol of the fated mate. By sitting in it, you awakened the bond. You are now part of our world, whether you wish it or not." Ilara's stomach tightened. She wanted to protest, to insist that she was nothing more than a wanderer, but the look in his eyes held her still. She realized that this king, this creature of legend, was unlike anyone she had ever met. He was dangerous, yes, but also fascinating. Kale gestured toward the hall. "You will learn. Today the court will teach you our ways." As they walked through the great hall, Ilara felt the eyes of the Lycan nobles on her. Some watched with curiosity, others with suspicion. Every step she took was heavy with expectation. The whispers followed her like shadows. She realized that she had entered a society bound by laws older than human memory, where every action carried meaning. In the training chambers, Kale began her lessons. He spoke of the laws of the Lycan court, of the sacred mating ceremony, of the ancient rituals that bound the king and fated mate together. He taught her how to move with awareness, how to sense the subtle currents of energy in the hall, how to listen to the language of body and presence among the pack. Elara struggled at first. Every movement felt awkward. Every glance at Kale made her heart race. Yet beneath the challenge there was a thrill, a strange magnetic pull toward him that she could not deny. Kale noticed her hesitation and stopped. "You are tense," he said, his voice soft, almost thoughtful. "Relax, the court is not a battlefield, and for now, you must learn to feel, not just act." She frowned, unsure what he meant. "Feel what?" "Everything," Kale replied, his eyes locked on hers. "The air, the presence of others, the power in this place, and your bond with me." Her pulse quickened at the words. Bond? She had not yet understood what that truly meant, but when Kale stepped closer, the air between them charged and she felt a shiver run down her spine. His closeness was intoxicating, overwhelming, yet not threatening. "You cannot fight it," he said, his voice low. "The bond will grow whether you accept it or not. But understanding it will give you strength." Elara bit her lip, trying to steady her racing thoughts. She wanted to resist, to remain the independent human she had always been. Yet every glance, every word from Kale tugged at her, pulling her deeper into a world she did not yet fully understand. As the day passed, Kyle guided her through the rituals of the court. She learned the importance of position, of gaze, of movement. She learned how to read the subtle shifts in the pack, the way a flick of an ear, a curl of a tail, a shift in stance could speak volumes. During a pause in the lessons, Kale led her outside, to a balcony that overlooked the forest. The trees stretched endlessly, their tops lost in the mist. The moon, still high, bathed everything in silver. "You are learning," Kale said, his tone softer now, almost private. "But there is more than technique. There is trust. The fated mate must trust the king, and the king must trust the mate." Elara stared at him, uncertain. "How can I trust someone I barely know?" Kale's gaze did not waver. "Trust is not given freely. It is earned, and sometimes it is demanded." His words were simple, yet heavy with meaning. She felt the weight of his truth pressing against her, and for the first time, she understood the depth of the bond she had accidentally claimed. Before she could respond, a commotion echoed from the hall below. A group of Lycan warriors had returned from a scouting mission, their expressions tense. Kale's demeanor shifted instantly from teacher to king. "Elara," he said, his hand brushing hers briefly, a touch that sent a jolt through her. "Observe. This is the reality of our world. Danger is always near." From the balcony, they watched the warriors lower their heads in respect. A rival pack had been spotted near the borders, testing the strength of Kale's rule. Elara felt a thrill of fear and excitement. This was not a world of peace or simple rules. This was a world where power demanded respect and survival required courage. Kale turned to her. "You must understand. One day this world will touch you directly, and when it does, you must be ready." Elara nodded, though her heart raced. She was still a human in a land of beings far stronger than herself. Yet in Kale's presence she felt a strange sense of purpose, as though she had been drawn here for a reason she did not yet know. The night fell, and the silver light of the moon bathed the forest and hall in an otherworldly glow. Kale led her to a secluded courtyard, where the air was thick with the scent of pine and earth. Wolves howled in the distance, a haunting, melodic sound that stirred something deep within her. "You have done well today," Kyle said, his voice softer, almost personal. "But learning is only the beginning. Understanding the bond, that will take time." Elara glanced at him, her throat tight. Do you always speak like this to humans?" Kale's lips curved faintly as if amused. "Few humans stand where you stand and see as you see. Perhaps you are not like the others." The words sent a shiver through her. She did not know if it was fear or something else, something deeper. She realized that the king's attention was a force of its own, drawing her into a world of danger, power, and undeniable attraction. As they returned to the hall, a soft wind stirred the mist. Kyle's hand brushed hers again, brief but deliberate. The moment lingered, charged with a tension neither could name but both felt. It was a small connection, yet it spoke of trust, challenge, and the beginnings of something far older and more binding than either of them understood. That night, as Ilara lay in her chamber, the moonlight spilling across the floor, she could not sleep. Her mind replayed the day. The lessons, Cale's gaze, the bond she could not yet comprehend. She realized that she had entered a world she could never leave, a world where every choice mattered, and every step could change her fate. And somewhere deep in the shadows of the hall, Cale watched her silently, his thoughts unreadable, but his golden eyes reflecting a storm of emotion. The fated mate had arrived. The bond had begun. Cliffhanger. Outside in the forest, a shadow moves silently through the trees, watching the hall. The whisper of danger drifts on the wind. The fated mate is here. But not all welcome her arrival. The days that followed were both mesmerizing and exhausting for Ilara. She rose with the moon and trained under Cale's watchful eyes. Each lesson was a challenge, not only of strength or skill, but of understanding the delicate balance of power, trust, and presence within the Lycan court. She learned to move with awareness, to sense the currents of energy in the hall, to read the smallest gestures of those around her. At first, it overwhelmed her. The Lycan nobles were quick to notice her mistakes, whispering in their sharp melodic language. But Cale never scolded. Instead, he guided her patiently, correcting with quiet authority, teaching her that mistakes were only opportunities to learn. His closeness made her heart race, yet his confidence reassured her. "You are stronger than you know," Cale said one evening as they practiced near the balcony overlooking the forest. "But strength alone will not protect you. Understanding will." Ilara wiped the sweat from her brow and looked at him. "Understanding what?" Cale's golden eyes seemed to pierce into her very soul. "Everything. The bond between us. The laws of the court. The world that surrounds us. There are secrets here, human, that even your people could not dream of." Ilara felt a shiver run through her. Secrets. She had already glimpsed only a fraction of this world, yet it had changed her in ways she did not understand. The memory of sitting in Kyle's throne still burned in her mind, the weight, the awe, the strange pull of destiny. Now she realized the depth of the path she had stepped onto. One night, under a blood-red moon, Cale brought her to a secluded garden. The trees were twisted into shapes that seemed to move with the wind, and the air shimmered with faint silver sparks. Here he told her more about his past. "I was not born to lead," Cale admitted quietly, his gaze distant. "I inherited the throne after my father fell to treachery. I have known only solitude and duty. The crown binds me, but it also isolates me. No one sees the loneliness behind the strength." Ilara listened, captivated despite herself. She had known loneliness too, though of a different kind. A human life constrained by rules she could never fully follow. But hearing Cale speak of his isolation, of the burden of his power, made her heart ache in a way she could not explain. "You are not like the others," he said, turning his gaze to her. "Even now you see beyond the surface. Most humans cannot." Ilara's breath caught. "Why me?" she whispered. "Why this bond? Why now?" Cale's eyes softened, but his voice remained steady. "The fated mate is not chosen by chance. The laws of the Lycan court are older than memory. Your arrival was inevitable. You carry the blood of destiny. You are meant to walk this path with me." The weight of his words pressed upon her. She wanted to reject them, to claim her independence, but there was a part of her, a small, hesitant part, that longed to believe them. And when Cale extended his hand, not in command but in invitation, she felt a pull she could not resist. Their training continued over the next days, but a shadow began to stir in the court. A rival clan, one that had long opposed Cale's rule, began to test the limits of his authority. Messages arrived, subtle threats cloaked as formal warnings. Ilara observed the tension in Cale's movements, the way his golden eyes flickered with unspoken concern. One evening, as they practiced near the edge of the forest, a Lycan warrior approached panting with a message sealed in blood-red wax. Cale broke it open with his claws, his eyes scanning the words swiftly. "They are moving against us," he said, his voice tight. "They seek weakness." "They see you as that weakness." Ilara's heart leaped into her throat. "Me? Why?" "Because the fated mate is always a symbol," Cale explained, his gaze darkening. "A test for the court. And now the enemy believes that if they can challenge you, they can challenge me. Fear and determination mingled within her. She had never thought herself capable of such danger, yet the thought of standing beside Cale, facing these trials, awakened a courage she did not know she possessed. Cale studied her closely. You must understand, Ilara. Strength comes not only from power, but from knowing who you are and what you are willing to defend. Tonight you will see a world you did not know existed, and you will learn your place in it. As darkness fell, he led her deeper into the forest, to a glade illuminated by the silver glow of the moon. Wolves howled in the distance, and the air thrummed with an unseen energy. Cale stopped at the center, gesturing for her to stand beside him. Ilara, he said, his voice low, close your eyes. She obeyed, though her pulse quickened. The sounds of the forest seemed to fade, replaced by a hum of power that vibrated through her bones. Cale moved behind her, his presence radiating warmth and strength, and she felt an invisible tether linking them together. Feel it, Cale instructed. The bond. The energy that flows between us. You are part of this world now, whether you accept it or not. The court, the pack, even your own destiny is connected to me. At first she felt only confusion, but slowly a current began to flow through her, subtle at first, then stronger. She sensed the forest, the creatures, and the faint heartbeat of the land itself. And then, faintly, she felt Cale's presence, not just beside her, but within her awareness, a pulse of power and attention that stirred something deep in her chest. You are awakening, Kyle murmured, his voice close to her ear. Do not fear it. This is the beginning. Ilara's eyes snapped open. She felt different, stronger yet lighter, more aware yet strangely connected. She looked at Cale and for the first time truly saw him, not as a king, not as a creature of legend, but as a being of immense power and profound loneliness. She understood in a quiet, undeniable way why the fated mate bond had chosen her, but the moment of revelation was cut short. A distant howl, unnatural and sharp, echoed through the glade. Cale's ears twitched, his body tensing. They are here, he said, his voice like a whip in the night. The rivals. They seek to challenge the fated mate. Stay close. Before she could respond, shadows moved between the trees. Figures emerged, tall, lithe, and hostile, their eyes glowing with malice. Ilara realized in an instant that Cale had been right. She was a symbol of his strength and his vulnerability. Kyle stepped in front of her, his body radiating power, his claws glinting in the moonlight. You will not touch her, he growled. And the forest seemed to respond, the wind whipping violently, the trees bending as though alive. The rival Lycan warriors hesitated, sensing the storm of energy radiating from the king and his fated mate. And in that moment, Ilara understood something she had not before. Her bond with Cale was not just symbolic, it was real, primal and protective. The leader of the rivals stepped forward, snarling. The fated mate does not belong to you, Cale. She is weak. She will be ours. Cale's eyes blazed. No, she belongs to me, and anyone who doubts that will face the consequences. Ilara felt a surge of something she could not name. Fear, yes, but also power, and a strange, exhilarating certainty. She was not helpless. The bond had awakened, and with it a strength that was hers, yet linked to Cale. She would stand beside him. She would face this danger. The rival leader hissed, but before he could advance, Cale lunged, his speed and power breathtaking. In the chaos that followed, Ilara stayed close, feeling the rhythm of Cale's movements, sensing his intentions, and realizing that she could, in some small way, influence the battle simply by being present. When the fight ended, the rivals fled into the forest, leaving only the echo of their malice behind. Cale's chest heaved, his golden eyes softening as he looked at her. You are learning, he said quietly, almost tenderly, not just about the court, but about yourself. Ilara nodded, still catching her breath. She had faced danger, had seen the strength and the burden of Cale's world, and had not fled. A small spark of pride warmed her chest. She realized, perhaps for the first time, that she was no longer the wanderer who had stumbled into the Lycan King's hall. She was part of something greater, something ancient, something dangerous and beautiful. As they returned to the hall, the moon high above them, Ilara felt the bond between them tighten, subtle but undeniable. She understood now that her life had changed forever, and that the trials she had glimpsed were only the beginning. Cliffhanger. In the shadows of the forest, a pair of glowing eyes watched the hall. A whisper floated on the wind, chilling and dark. The fated maid awakens. But the shadows have not forgotten her arrival. The forest was alive with silver light, and Alara could feel the pulse of the land beneath her feet. Each tree, each leaf seemed to hum with unseen energy. The bond between her and Kale had grown stronger since the attack of the rival clan. She could feel him beside her even when he was silent, a steady presence in the chaos of her thoughts. Kale led her deeper into the forest, toward a place he called the Sanctuary of the Moon, a hidden glade where the oldest Lycan rituals took place. The air was thick with the scent of moss and pine, and faint motes of silver light danced between the trees. "You are ready to face the trials," Kyle said, his voice calm but firm. "The curse that threatens the pack is ancient and dangerous. You must understand it, or it may consume us all." Alara swallowed hard. The word curse stirred fear in her chest, but also a quiet determination. She had come so far. She had faced danger, learned the court's ways, and felt the pull of the bond between them. Now she could not turn away. Kale stopped at the center of the glade. "Stand here," he instructed. "Close your eyes and feel the power of the moon. Let it guide you." Alara obeyed. She closed her eyes, and immediately a current of energy ran through her, warm and cold all at once. She felt the heartbeat of the forest, the rhythm of the land, and something else, something ancient and powerful. She sensed Kyle beside her, not just in the physical sense, but as if their souls were connected. "You are the fated mate," Kyle said softly. "This bond will protect you, but it will also demand strength, courage, and trust." A low hum rose in the air. The ground beneath her feet seemed to vibrate. Alara opened her eyes and gasped. Shadows had formed around them, dark swirling shapes, twisted and unnatural. They were the remnants of the curse awakened by her presence. Kyle stepped in front of her, his form shifting, muscles coiled like springs ready to strike. "Do not fear," he said. "Face them together." Alara's heart pounded. She was human, and yet she could feel the energy of the bond guiding her movements. She raised her hands instinctively, and silver light pulsed from her fingertips, illuminating the shadows. The creatures recoiled, hissing and twisting. She realized then that the bond had awakened something within her, a hidden strength she had never known. Kyle's eyes gleamed with pride and surprise. "You are stronger than I imagined," he said, his voice low, almost a growl. "Let it flow through you. Do not hold back." Together they moved as one. Kale struck with precise force, Ilara's energy weaving around his attacks. The shadows shrieked, swirling and writhing, but they could not withstand the combination of human courage and Lycan power. When the last of the shadows dissolved into the night, Alara collapsed to her knees, exhausted but exhilarated. Kale knelt beside her, placing a hand on her shoulder. The warmth of his touch sent a shiver through her, but also a strange comfort. "You have done well," he said. "Tonight you have not only faced the curse, but begun to understand your own power." Alara looked up at him, her chest heaving. I never knew I could do that," she whispered. Kale's eyes softened, a rare tenderness in their golden glow. "You are more than you know. And I am learning too. This bond, it changes everything, even for me." The moment hung between them, charged and unspoken. Alara felt the pull of something deeper than fear or admiration, something that made her heart ache and soar at the same time. She realized that the bond was not just about destiny or law. It was about trust, connection, and the quiet stirring of emotions she had never allowed herself to feel before. But their moment was interrupted. A rustling in the trees signaled the arrival of another presence. A figure stepped into the glade, cloaked and shadowed, yet radiating a dark, dangerous energy. Alara recognized the aura immediately, an enemy of Kale's, one who had long sought to undermine his rule. Kale rose, his body tense, his eyes narrowing. "You have returned," he said, his voice a warning. "You will not harm her." The stranger smiled, a thin, cruel curve. "The fated mate, she is stronger than I expected. But even strength can be broken. Even bonds can be tested." Alara felt fear rise, but she did not retreat. The bond between her and Kale thrummed through her veins, steady and protective. She understood now that she was not alone. Together they could face this threat. The stranger lunged, and Kyle met them with a roar, his strength and speed breathtaking. Alara followed, letting the bond guide her. Silver energy flowed from her hands, weaving around Kale's attacks, striking with precision she did not fully understand. The battle raged through the glade, shadows and light colliding. Ilara realized that she had changed. She was no longer a passive human at the mercy of Kale's world. She was active, powerful, and connected. She could feel his thoughts, his movements, his protective instincts, and they moved in harmony as if their bond had existed long before they met. Finally, the stranger fell back, defeated but not destroyed. Kale's eyes blazed as he stepped forward, but he did not strike. Instead, he turned to Ilara, his chest heaving, golden eyes glowing. "You are ready," he said softly, "ready to embrace what is coming, ready to stand beside me as the fated mate. But understand this, danger is never gone. The trials are only beginning." Ilara nodded, exhausted, yet a fierce determination filled her. She had faced shadows. She had faced her fear, and she had discovered a strength within herself she had never known. She was no longer the wanderer who had stumbled into Kale's hall. She was the fated mate, bound not just by law, but by trust, courage, and the stirring of a bond neither of them fully understood. As they returned to the hall, the moon high above, Ilara felt the weight of destiny settle around her like a cloak. She knew the court would test her further, that enemies would continue to rise, and that Kale's world was fraught with danger and intrigue. But for the first time, she did not feel fear. She felt purpose. She felt connection, and in the quiet of the night as they stood together in the hall, Kale placed a hand on hers, a simple gesture, yet it spoke of protection, trust, and the promise of more to come. Cliffhanger. In the darkness beyond the hall, unseen eyes watched them. A whisper, soft and sinister, floated on the wind. The fated mate has grown stronger, but the darkness knows no mercy, and it will test her heart next. The first light of dawn crept over the horizon, painting the forest in shades of gold and silver. Ilara stood at the edge of the glade, her pulse steady, her senses sharpened. The past days had changed her completely. She was no longer the wandering human who had stumbled into the Lycan King's hall. She was the fated mate, bound by destiny, strength, and a connection that transcended words. Kale appeared beside her, silent as a shadow, yet radiating power that made the air itself vibrate. His golden eyes met hers, and in that gaze, Ilara saw trust, pride, and a depth of emotion she had never imagined. The bond between them had grown stronger with each trial, each challenge, each shared moment of fear and courage. "The curse grows stronger," Kyle said quietly, his voice carrying the weight of command and concern. "We face our final test today. It will not be easy, and it will demand everything from both of us." Ilara nodded. She did not feel fear, only resolve. Together they stepped into the forest where shadows moved like living things, and the wind whispered ancient secrets. The trees seemed to bend toward them, guiding their path to the heart of the darkness. At the center of the forest lay a pit, black and endless, a void that seemed to breathe. From its depths a low growl echoed, vibrating through the ground and into their bones. This was the source of the curse, the heart of the darkness that had threatened Kale's pack for centuries. Kale took her hand, a grounding touch, and she felt the familiar pulse of their bond. "Stay close. Trust me and trust yourself." Ilara swallowed and nodded. Together they stepped forward. The shadows rose, swirling around them like a living storm, whispering doubts, fears, and old, forgotten pain. But the bond between them shone like a silver flame, pushing the darkness back, steady and unwavering. "You must face it," Kyle said. "The darkness will try to divide you, to make you doubt the bond. Do not let it." Ilara's heart pounded as the shadows pressed closer, testing every ounce of her courage. She remembered the lessons Kale had taught her, the awareness, the focus, the connection. She raised her hands, letting the energy of the bond flow through her, and felt it amplify the strength within her. The shadows writhed and shrieked, forming shapes that mirrored her deepest fears. Being alone, being powerless, failing Kale. Her chest tightened, but Kale's voice, steady and sure, cut through the darkness. "You are not alone, Ilara. We are together. You are stronger than you know." She focused on the bond, on the warmth and strength that flowed between them. Slowly, the fear transformed into clarity, the doubt into courage. The shadows began to recoil, twisting and screaming as their combined power pushed back the darkness. Kale moved beside her, precise and powerful, striking at the forms that surged toward them. Ilara's energy weaved around him, protective and fierce. Together they became a single force, unstoppable, shining with the light of the bond. Finally, with a roar that shook the forest, Kale struck the heart of the darkness, and Alara poured all her strength into the final surge. The shadows screamed, twisting and turning, and then vanished, leaving only silence and the gentle hum of the forest. Alara sank to her knees, exhausted but exhilarated. Kale knelt beside her, his hand resting on hers. Their eyes met, and in that moment words were unnecessary. They had faced the darkness together and emerged victorious. "You were incredible," Kale said softly, his golden eyes warm and intense. "Not just for the court, not just for the pack, but for me." Alara felt a flush rise to her cheeks. I could not have done it without you," she whispered. Kale leaned closer, the bond between them palpable, a force that connected heart to heart. "And I could not have done it without you, the fated mate. You complete the bond. You make me stronger not just as a king, but as someone who feels again." Alara's breath caught. She had felt it too. The pull, the connection, the unspoken emotion that had grown between them through danger, trust, and shared struggle. The bond was not just destiny or law. It was something living, something real, something eternal. Kyle lifted her chin gently, and for the first time his lips brushed hers, soft yet full of the intensity of their shared journey. The kiss was brief but full of promise, sealing the bond they had awakened together. The forest seemed to breathe with them, the silver light of dawn reflecting off leaves and streams, blessing the moment with quiet beauty. Alara felt a warmth that had nothing to do with the sun and everything to do with the connection they shared. "You belong here," Kyle murmured, his forehead resting against hers. "With me, with the pack, with the court, and with the bond that ties us together." Alara nodded, feeling a deep sense of peace. She had come into this world by accident, a wanderer in a hall of kings and legends. But she had found her place, her purpose, and a connection she could never have imagined. As they returned to the Lycan court, the nobles greeted them with awe and respect. The trials had been witnessed by some, the courage of the fated mate recognized by all. Whispers of admiration and relief followed their steps, yet Kale's attention never wavered from Alara. She felt seen, not just as a symbol or a bond, but as herself, strong, brave, and cherished. Later, in the Hall of the Throne, Kale raised his voice. "The curse has been broken. The pack is safe, and the fated mate has proven herself not only to me but to all who dwell in this court." Applause and murmurs of respect echoed through the hall. Alara stood beside Kale, her chest full of pride and humility. She had survived trials, faced darkness, and discovered strength she did not know she possessed. And she had found something else: trust, connection, and a love that grew not from ease, but from challenge and understanding. Kyle lowered his hand to hers, squeezing gently. "You are mine and I am yours," he said, his voice quiet but firm. "And now we face the future together, whatever it may hold." Alara looked up at him, her golden brown eyes reflecting courage and certainty. "Together," she echoed. The bond between them pulsed, steady and eternal, a promise written not just in law or destiny, but in heart and spirit. The trials had shaped them, tested them, and brought them to this moment, a union of strength, trust, and quiet, powerful love. Outside, the forest shimmered with life. The dawn's light danced across the leaves, and the silver glow of the moon lingered, a reminder of the trials they had faced and the bond they had forged. The pack howled in celebration, a chorus of triumph that echoed through the mountains. Kale turned to Alara, his golden eyes soft yet blazing with the promise of all that lay ahead. "Rest now," he said. "Tomorrow the court will honor you, but tonight we celebrate what has been won and what has been found." Alara smiled, a sense of peace settling over her. She had walked into the hall of the Lycan king by accident, but she had emerged transformed, a part of a world that was fierce, dangerous, and breathtakingly beautiful. She was no longer a wanderer. She was the fated mate, bound by destiny, strength, and love. As they stood together, the bond between them pulsing like the heartbeat of the forest itself, Alara knew one thing with certainty. No matter what trials or darkness awaited, she and Kale would face them together. Their fates were entwined, their hearts bound, and their bond eternal. And in the silence of the hall, with the first rays of sun spilling over the mountains, the Lycan king whispered, just for her, "You are my mate, my strength, my heart, forever. Ilara smiled, her own voice quiet but unwavering. And you are mine, Kale, forever. The forest outside echoed with their triumph and the promise of a future built together, a future where darkness could never divide them, and where the bond of the fated mate and the Lycan king would shine eternal. Cliffhanger, resolution with promise of future. As the sun rose higher, the shadows of the past faded, yet a soft whisper lingered on the wind. The bond is eternal, but the world beyond the forest still stirs with secrets waiting to be revealed.